So let's go to, before we start creating the parametric family, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to I'm going to open up a family, bring it into a new project, and let's just look at some of the basic components of it and how it works. Yes, please. Here, I'll get it.
I'll do.
I'm closer. I'll do.
I love to argue.
Should have been a lawyer.
Should have.
Architecture.
Be making a lot more money. All right, so let's we'll open this up. So a couple classes ago, we learned how to bring in different components and different families, correct? So let's go to place component, and I'm going to, let me find a little bit simpler of an object. Actually, this desk here will work just fine, okay? So I'm going to bring this desk in. Let's look at our really neat desk that we have here, and let's look at the different components that makes up this desk, okay, in terms of parametric components. So as I said last class, the difference between regular families and parametric families are the fact that when you bring in one of these objects into your project, that it's able to flex, okay? And what that means is that you can make it, higher, you can make it wider, longer, taller. You can adjust the different parameters of the family so that you don't have to go and create a new table every time you need to, you want one that's a different size, okay? So that's kind of the basic rundown of what a parametric family is. So whoever created this desk that we see here on the screen, when they created it, they added some parametric functions to it. So if we go to edit type, we're going to notice a couple different types of parameters. One's going to be called type parameters, and one are going to be called instance parameters. Okay. If we click on this desk and we go to edit type, all of these parameters that you see here under dimensions and under materials and finishes, these are all going to be examples of type parameters. Okay. So if you are using the 60 by 30 desk, these are all the parameters that are associated with that desk, okay? If you look at some of the other types, so if you go to 72 by 36, these are going to be the parameters that are associated with that desk, okay? If you want to duplicate this and create a different one, you can create another set of type parameters that you can make adjustments to, okay? Now, if you look at the ones that we have here, we have width, leg height, depth, along with a variety of materials for that desk, okay? So you can change the material of the desktop, you can change the material of the leg and the body, okay? So these are all different parameters that the creator of this desk set up. Now, the other type of parameters are going to be called instance parameters. For this particular object, there are no instance parameters associated with it, okay? If there was an instance parameter, you would be able to see them right here under your properties dialog box without having to go to the edit type. Okay, changing the type parameters will change those parameters for all desks of that type, okay, in the instance that you have multiple of those objects. Just like when you're creating windows or doors, you change the width or the height of one of those windows or doors, it's going to change all of them for that particular type. When you see instance parameters, you'll see them right here under the properties dialog box prior to going into edit type, and you'll be able to change those as you please without having to create a new type, okay? So we'll look at how to create both of those today. But the overall goal of creating a parametric family or using a parametric family is, of course, functionality, so that you can easily change the different the different parameters of that object without having to create a whole new one, okay? So let's go ahead and look at how to do that. So I'm gonna just go up to the Revit symbol. I'm gonna go to new. Nope, not that. Let's see, we're gonna go to new, we're gonna go to family. And last class we looked at kind of the variety of different families that you can create. Today we're not going to use generic model, but instead we're going to go ahead and use furniture. So the reason why we're using furniture versus generic model for the creation of this family is so that some of the smart components inside Revit if you click on furniture, it will be associated as a furniture if you go over to your visibility and graphics and you want to turn things on and off. By clicking on furniture, it allows you to be able to turn off furniture as a whole versus generic model. It's not quite categorized one step further. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go to furniture, and this will actually create the model as a floor-based model as well, so that when you import it into your new project, it will also have some of those floor-based capabilities as well. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and click on furniture. And you're going to notice that we have a very similar, in fact, it's probably nearly identical of a template as we got for the generic model. Okay, so let's take the first steps. Let's go to our assignment and let's look at what we got. Let's look at our instructions. Okay, so we're going to go down to critical thinking exercise number 10, and the first step that it talks about is it talks about finding an object that you want to model. Okay, so for simplicity purposes of the lecture, we're gonna go ahead and build about the simplest little table little table that you can imagine. Okay, so we're gonna build this lac table from IKEA. Okay, $10 for a table. God, it just blows my mind. I think if you get it in white, I think it's even cheaper. 8.
Wow.
Is someone like, ooh, I don't know, that's just pushing it a little too much. And if you want to sell this later on in the future, do you ask 5? I think you just
give it up.
I think you just give it away. Like, you can't, if I saw this on Craigslist, I would just be like, come on, just go give it to your neighbor, go give it to a college student. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and build this lac table today. And if you want to pick something else, actually IKEA is a fantastic website to just go find a different table if you're looking for a little bit more of a challenge. Obviously, the more components or the more pieces involved in the furniture that you want to build, the harder the parametric family will be. And parametric families can be about as hard as you can imagine. They get tough depending on what it is that you're building, and I certainly encounter some that I can't build myself. So we'll stick to kind of a simpler object today, and we're going to go ahead and create this wonderful lac table from IKEA. And the nice thing about IKEA as well is that it also gives you dimensions and some other tools that will help you build the object that you're trying to create. So let's go ahead and build a lac table from IKEA. All right. So the first step, unlike last class, so last class when we created a basic family, we just started building the different shapes using the form tools that we have up here in our ribbon, right? So we're going to take a step back before doing that, and what we're going to do is we're going to set up some reference points, okay? These reference planes will act as boundaries to the parameters that we create, okay? So the first reference plane that we're going to create, we're going to go ahead and go up to create, and we're going to go down to RP for reference plane. All right, and we're going to go ahead and draw a few. Now, the size of, or the actual location of where you place these reference planes is not super critical at the initial point, because we're going to add some dimensions that will define those locations here in just a few minutes. What is important is that when we set up our reference planes is that we do it around the center of our crosshairs that we have here, okay? When you set up your new family inside Revit, it gives you 2 reference planes by default, okay? And these are the ones that we're going to work around. The center of these crosshairs represents the center or the origin of where that object will be placed inside your model in the future, okay? So we're going to go ahead and set up a couple initial reference planes. I'm going to say that we'll just kind of do these maybe about 2 feet out. All right, we're going to set up one on the right-hand side. We're going to go ahead and set up one on the left-hand side. And we're going to do the same thing around the horizontal reference plane. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and set one up at 2 feet, and we're going to set another one up about 2 feet. Okay, so we have something that looks kind of like that. And what this is going to be is this is going to be the outer extents of our tabletop, okay? These edges of these reference planes will be the boundaries of the tabletop, okay? And then later on down the road, we will create the physical object that represents the tabletop, which will be locked to these reference planes, okay? So, and by doing that, you're starting to give some smart capability to the object that you're creating, okay? So those are the first reference planes that we're going to create. All right, and the next ones that we're going to build are going to be the reference planes that are associated with our table legs, okay? So from there, I'm going to say maybe about 2 inches, maybe 2 or 3 inches. I'm going to go ahead and set up another set from the inside of our outer reference planes, okay? So we're going to get something that looks a little bit like this, all right? So you can see here we have a boundary that kind of represents our tabletop, and then these squares right here will be representational of our legs, okay? So let's go ahead and add the next step, and we're going to add a reference plane for the level, for the tabletop that represents the height of the table, all right? So I'm going to go over to my elevation, and I'm going to go to, let's see, maybe it's back. Let's see. Okay, perfect. So we're going to go ahead and click on back, and let's stretch out a few of these things just to kind of give us a little bit more room. All right, and I'm going to add another reference plane, create reference plane, and I'm going to go ahead and draw that up here, and that's going to be for our height. Again, the actual location at the initial stage is not important. Okay, we'll go ahead and fix that here in just a little bit. So going back to our original floor plan or our reference level, let's begin to add our parametric capabilities, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and go up to annotate, and I'm gonna go up to aligned dimension, okay? And I'm gonna do aligned dimension, and I'm going to first start out by clicking on the outermost reference plane, and I'm going to align it with the one on the opposite side, okay? So right there, it tells me that the width of our table is 4 feet, okay? And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side and go ahead and align the outer 2 edges, and that's going to be representational of the width of our tabletop, okay? So from there, we can start to add some parameters. So what we're going to do now is we're going to click on the dimension that we just created, okay? And up here under the label dimension option, we're going to go ahead and click on this little button right here that looks like either looks like a cell phone with a little sun, or maybe it's like an old Game Boy with the sun, for those of you that had a Game Boy, or maybe it's like a really old Mac. And it's a very weird symbol. I don't know why that represents parameter, but anyways, that's the symbol we're going to click on. So we're going to click on create parameter, and from here we can start to define the types of parameters that we want to add to our table, okay? So we're going to go ahead and leave this on family parameter. Everything that we do, we will leave on family parameter, okay? And we're also going to, for all of our dimensions, we're going to make them all type parameters, okay? So we're going to leave type on versus instance, and then under group parameter, we're going to go ahead and we're going to leave this under dimension, okay? And what that is, if you click on it, that's going to be basically this little gray header that you see under your properties dialog. Well, when you click on edit type and you see dimension, that's what you're assigning right here under dimension, okay? So you're creating a category of the parameters that you want to keep. So the category that we're going to choose is dimension, okay? So the first parameter that we're going to create, we're going to go ahead and call this table width, or table length. Let's call it table length, okay? And we're going to go ahead and hit OK. All right, so now notice that dimension now says table length 4 feet. Okay, we're going to do the same thing to the other one. We're going to click on it, and we're going to go ahead and add a new parameter, and we're going to call this one table width. All right, and everything looks good. We're going to go ahead and hit OK. We're going to go back to our front elevation here, and we're going to go ahead and add a dimension. Again, annotate. We're going to go to align, and we're going to click on the reference level below, and we're going to go ahead and align it with our top reference line. Okay, so we're going to click on that dimension, and again, click on add parameter, and we're going to go ahead and call this table height. Okay, and we're going to hit OK. All right, so now we have 3 basic parameters. Okay, now let's go back to our reference plane, and what we're going to do is we're going to test the parameters that we're creating. Now, it's a very, very good idea to always go through and test the parameters that you're working, make sure that they flex the way that you want to. The last thing you want to do is create all these, think you did it correctly, and then you go and add your tabletop and all of these objects and realize that it doesn't work. Okay, so and these parametric families can be really tricky, and sometimes they can be really difficult. So it's always good to go in and test thoroughly as many times as you need to. All right. So if we go up here to our ribbon, you'll notice this little button right here with the little grid, and this is going to be our family types button. Okay. So if we click on that, we will notice our first 3 parameters that we've created. Okay, so let's go ahead and test these to make sure that they work. Okay, so I'm going to go to table width, and let's change this to say 6 feet. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and hit apply. Notice that that reference plane changed as I changed that. Okay, now there's one thing, so that works. That's good. I'm going to go ahead and change that back to 4 feet. But there's one thing that this is not doing that we want this to do, is we want it to change in width and length, and we want it to be equal to the center axis. Okay, we don't want the table to get wider in this direction. We want the table to get wider in this direction. Okay, so we're going to take our dimensioning one step further. Okay, so we're going to go back over to annotate, and we're going to go back to align, and we're going to click on the outer dimension. Then we're going to click on our center axis, the one that was given to us with our family, and then we're going to click on our outer line. Okay, and then go ahead and click. All right, so now we have 2 feet and 2 feet, and from here we're going to go ahead and click on the equal sign. If you see this little equal sign, we're going to go ahead and click on that, and what that's telling the parameter is that when you adjust the width, the width will be adjusted equally along that center axis. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just kind of clean this up, because once we kind of get going here, we're going to have dimensions all over the place. So it's good to kind of keep it organized. Exactly. Okay, so it's good to keep an organized kind of palette in front of us. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and go up to annotate and align, and let's add our equal dimensions to our table length. Okay, so I'm going to select that, and up here at the very top, I'm going to go ahead and click on equal. All right, and that looks good. So let's go back to our type parameters dialog box, and let's try this again. All right, so let's click on 6 feet, and we're going to click on apply. Now notice that our table has altered in width equally along that center axis. Okay, let's try the table length and apply. Okay, good. So that's what we want. I'm going to go ahead and put this back to 4 feet to where we had it, and we're going to continue adding some more additional details. All right, apply back to where we were, and now we can apply our dimensions for our table legs. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go back up to annotate, and we're going to go to align. I'm going to start with the outside face of my table. Okay, so I'm going to go 1, 2, click. All right, I'm going to go ahead and lock this dimension. Okay, so that's something that we have not done yet. All right, actually, do I want to do that? Sorry, I'm kind of just backtracking in my steps in my head. Actually, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to lock that dimension yet. All right, so we're going to do the exact same thing, going from the outside in on all 4 of these legs. Okay, so we're going to have something that looks like that. Yeah.
What's the difference if you start from outside to inside, or from inside?
Outside to inside. What we're doing is by clicking on the outside first, we're telling the family that when the table gets wider you adjust the width or the length of the table, that the legs also are associated with the outside face of that table. okay? So from here, we're going to go ahead and select all of these dimensions together, and we're going to go up and we're going to add another parameter, okay? We're going to click on that, and we're going to go ahead and call this table leg, I guess, width. They're going to stay square, so I guess it doesn't really matter. All right, so table leg width, and we're going to hit OK. So we'll have something that looks kind of like that. Okay, so now let's continue to test this, and let's make sure that this is working appropriately. So we're going to go ahead and change our table length. Let's try changing that to 6 feet. Okay, notice that as our table got wider, our legs also moved as well. So we know that that's successful. Okay, let's go to our table leg width. Let's maybe change this to 4 feet. Or, I'm sorry, not 4 feet, 4 inches. And we're going to hit apply. Notice that all of our table legs got a little bit larger, but they also got larger to the inside of the table. We don't want them to get larger on the outside. Otherwise, these legs that we have here on our tables would start to come out, and that's, we know that's not the way that we want that to look. Okay, so far so good. I'm going to bring this back to 4 feet. Everything's still working, so we can continue to proceed. Okay, go ahead and hit apply, and let's see, we'll change this back to 3 inches for now. And we'll hit OK. And let's go back to our back elevation, and let's add a couple details to our table height. Okay. First, let's make sure that this is working. So let's go back and let's test our table height. Maybe this is 3 feet. And apply. And everything is good. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and hit OK. And from here, we're going to go up to create, and we're going to add another reference plane, okay? This reference plane is going to represent the bottom of the tabletop, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and draw our tabletop at maybe 4 inches, okay? And from there, I'm going to go ahead and go up to annotate, and I'm gonna go to align, and I'm going to add a dimension to this tabletop. Okay, so that's 4 inches, and what I'm going to do here is a little bit different than what I did in the past. Is I'm going to lock this dimension. By locking this dimension, I'm telling the family that I want the table thickness to remain as a constant dimension. I don't want that to ever change. So when I adjust it, when I adjust the height of my table, that the tabletop remains at 4 inches, and that it will continue to move up and down. So I'm going to go ahead and lock that dimension like so. All right, so let's go ahead and test it again. Maybe the tabletop is now 4 feet. Let's just make sure that it works. Apply. Okay, so good. So so far we've added all of our reference planes that we need for our parametric family, and we know that they all work. Okay, so we've tested them, and we know that they all flex appropriately. Yeah.
Okay. The example of the thickness of the table, you like that. Do you have to add it in the list of these?
You could. So one of the things that you'll have to do when you're creating your family is you have to ask yourself, what functions do you want to be parametric? You could probably add parametric functionality to everything if you wanted to. You could probably have 30 of them, but you usually pick like the 3 or 4 most common. Okay, so which is width, height, length. But depending on what kind of a table or object chair that you're building, there might be other objects that want some parametric functionality. Okay, some little details that maybe you want to create. I had a guy in my office that unfortunately no longer works there, because he was actually also a Revit teacher, but he taught this class and an advanced class. But he was like the guru of creating parametric families in my office, and so we had like metal awnings, for example. He created a parametric family for a metal awning that you could adjust the awning width, the depth, the pitch, all of these different objects. You could even adjust the dimension of the standing seam on the metal panel. I mean, he was able to create some of the coolest stuff. But now that we have those in our server, how much time we save from being able to just put that awning on my building and just adjust my parameters versus building this object from scratch every time I need one. So the time invested into creating the parametric family correctly is always worth it. Okay, so let's continue to move on. Let's move to the next step, and that's going to be to build the actual physical objects that we want to associate with our table. All right, so we're going to go back to the reference plane, and we're going to go up to create, and then we're going to go to extrusion. Okay, so we're going to click on extrusion, and we're going to create our table top first. Okay, we can do this a couple of different ways, and I'm going to show you both ways. Okay, the first way is going to be to use the align tool. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and use my rectangle draw tool, and I'm going to just kind of draw an arbitrary shape. It doesn't have to be perfect, like so. All right, and I'm going to click on the check mark to go ahead and finish that. All right, so we have, if we go in 3D, we have just kind of a basic extruded rectangle that represents our tabletop right now. Okay, so from here, I'm going to go up and use my align tool. All right, so I'm going to click on align. I'm going to click on the edge that I want it to be associated with. So the first one we're going to do is this top edge, and I'm going to then click on the edge of my box that I just created. And notice that it pulled it over to that reference line, and then the last step I'm going to do is lock it. Okay, so as that reference plane moves, it's going to pull that face with it. Okay, so I can go ahead and do that with all of my faces, lock them all, like so. Okay, so if we go over to our 3D view, we can again test this to make sure it's working. Table width, we can say 6 feet, and there it got bigger. Okay, so far so good. We'll go ahead and hit OK. We'll assume that the rest of them work just fine. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm just going to hit Control Z, make this go back to a square. Okay, go back to our reference plane. All right, and let's look at this in our back elevation. Okay, and then we're going to do the same exact thing. We're going to go ahead and go up to, we're going to click on our object, and we're going to click, we're going to go ahead and click on the align tool. We're going to click on the reference plane first of our top table height. Go ahead and lock that in. Okay, do the same thing over here. Click on our reference plane, click on the bottom, and perfect. All right, lock it in, and now we have our tabletop. Okay, so let's look at another way that we can do that. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the reference plane. I'm going to do Control Z just to make this go back to our original state. Okay, actually let's just delete it and we'll start all over. Okay, so let's look at another way that we could do this. All right, so again, we're going to go up to create, and we're going to go to extrusion, and instead of just kind of clicking on an arbitrary area and just creating that box, I'm going to go ahead and start it at the corner of where I know or where my reference lanes are currently aligned with. Okay, so I'm going to start in this upper corner, and I'm going to draw all the way over, and I'm going to click on the opposite corner. Okay, from there, notice that we have a little lock key next to all 4 of our lines that we just created. Okay, so both ways, whether you do this or the previous one, will work exactly the same. You can get the same end result. You could probably argue that maybe this way right here has one less step. So up to you. I kind of do both. I don't really have a preference to which one it is. But from here, I can go ahead and hit the lock key on all of them, and go ahead and hit the check mark, and we should be all good. Again, let's go ahead and just test it real quick. Table width 6 feet, and we're good. All right, so both will work exactly the same way. All right, let's go back to my back elevation here. I'm just going to go ahead and, come on now. We'll go ahead and lock in our parameters of our tabletop. Okay, so we're going to go to align. I guess actually technically you'll have to do both. Okay, so there will be times when you could do the second technique that I just showed you, but you will still have to go back in examples like this and align certain elements, as you can't do it for all, or the original part for all. So we're going to go ahead and click on a reference plane, lock all of these in, and we're good. Okay, so there's going to be our tabletop. Let's go ahead and create the legs of our table. Okay, so again, we're going to go up to Create, and we're going to go to Extrusion, and just like we did just before, I'm going to start at the outermost corner. Oops, let me get my rectangle tool, and I'm going to fill in that like that. Okay, if we zoom in a little bit closer, we should be able to. Actually, I don't see the ones that I'm. Oh no, they're there. They're just over here on the edge. But I don't want to click on all of those. Sorry, it just looks a little bit different than I'm kind of used to. Oh nope, we're good. I'm going to go ahead and hit the check mark on all of them. They're just kind of spread out a little bit, so because they're not going to be all centralized. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the check mark on all of those, and I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Okay, so check, or I'm sorry, lock and lock. Okay, do the same thing on the outer side. Check. I'm sorry, I keep saying check. Lock, lock, and lock. All right, and we do the same thing on this side. Lock, 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 and lock. Okay, so all of our posts are all locked to all of the reference planes that are adjacent to them. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and hit the check mark, and let's look at this in 3D. Notice that our tabletop legs are not attached to the base of our table. Okay, so we're going to go to our back elevation, and we're going to click on those legs. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and align them to the bottom of our tabletop. Okay, so we're going to go to Align. We're going to click on the bottom reference plane, and then we're going to click on the top of our legs. Okay, notice that our legs went up and joined to the top of our table, and we're going to go ahead and lock that in place. Okay, that should be about it. All right, I don't think I'm forgetting anything, but I guess we'll find out in a second. So we'll go to our 3D view. We have our very basic table that we just created. Let's go to our type properties, and let's go ahead and just test this. All right, so table height. Let's make this maybe 3 feet. Hit apply. All right, so that works good. Our legs go down as we want. Table length. Let's make this maybe 6 feet. Perfect. So that looks good. Maybe make this 6 feet wide. Perfect. And let's taste our table leg width. Maybe we make that 6 inches to kind of make this proportionate. Perfect. So all successful. I'm actually really surprised that all worked out perfectly. Usually when you do the parametric family, or whenever I do the parametric family example, there's one little thing that I miss that makes it not all work at the very end. So I'm glad I recorded this one and that I have the perfect example working. Yeah.
So would you apply your materials at this point, or would you do that after it goes into?
So that will be the next step. So you have a couple options. We'll just go ahead and hit OK. You could simply click on the rectangles here, and you could just add a material here. But the goal is that we want to be able to add materials once we're in the project. Okay, we don't want to have to double click on the family and add the materials inside the family and then bring it back in. Okay. So, for example, let's go ahead and add some parameters for our materials. Okay, so let's see here. This is actually it's been a while since I've done this one. I might have to remind myself how to add the material parameters. Reference level. Let's see. We're going to click on here, and we're going to go ahead and go up to, let's see, family category and parameters. Is that the one that I want? This is a little bit different of a process. Okay, I may have to come back and show you guys how to do this one. I don't know if I. Okay, so new parameter. We've clicked on the tabletop. Okay, under group parameter name, I'm going to go ahead and change this down to material. Let's see. Oh, materials and finishes. Okay, so we're going to click on materials and finishes, and we're going to go ahead and change this to. We can also have this be an instance parameter. Okay, I'm sorry, a type parameter, and we're going to go up to name. We're going to call this table top finish. Okay, type of parameter. that doesn't look right. Let's see.
So there is a material there.
Yeah, group parameter, discipline common. Okay, I think this is correct. Let me go ahead and just try this, okay? Go ahead and hit okay. Okay, perfect. So this, no, this, oh, no, that's not it, 'cause that's not what I want. Let's see. I'm gonna come back to that part. For some reason, I haven't added the material parameter in a while. I just need to try a couple things, and I'll come back and I'll show you that. So I'm gonna go ahead and actually click on that. I'm going to delete it just for now. I'll come back to this here in just a second, and we'll add that material. I just don't want you guys to have to watch me do it for a few minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that parameter. I'm going to hit OK, and we'll go ahead and leave this with all of our adjustable dimension parameters at this particular time being. Okay, so that's going to be it. We're good. That's the end of our kind of our basic table. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save this to my thumb drive. So I'm going to do save as family. I'm just going to save it to my desktop here just for a few minutes. I'm going to go ahead and call this IKEA, what was it called? The lack table. I wonder, why do you think they call it that?
Lack.
Because it has a lack of anything? Style, personality, color.
It's cheap.
It's cheap.
And it's cheap. It's a lack of, if you have a lack of money, then this is the perfect table for you. All right, so we're going to go ahead and call this IKEA lack table. Okay, go ahead and hit save. All right, from there, what you're going to want to do is you're going to go ahead and load this into your Villa Savoie. Okay, go ahead and load it into there. That will allow you to place it somewhere inside your villa. Okay, you can delete it for now, but the goal is we will use this as a piece of furniture later on down the road. Okay, along with maybe some other more advanced pieces of furniture that we'll create a little bit later. Okay, so we'll go ahead and go into load into project, and this is not my Villa Savoie, but I can bring this into. We'll just pretend it's the Villa Savoie for now. Okay, look at that giant table. Just overshadowing this desk. But if we go over to edit type, we'll notice that we have all of our different instance parameters. Okay, we can start to create the different instances. Okay, so we can go ahead and go to duplicate, and maybe our first one is going to be called 4 foot high by 4 foot. No, I'm sorry. Let's do 4 foot wide by 4 feet long by 2 feet 6 inches high. So that'll be our first instance. I'll go ahead and change that, and we're going to change all of our dimensions to match that. Okay, so the table width will be 4 feet, table length will be 4 feet, and our table height is going to be 2 foot 6 inches, and we're going to hit OK. All right, so there's going to be our first little table. Okay, and then if you want to create others, you would just hit duplicate, and you would create multiple other instances depending on what your needs are. Okay, so that's going to be it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording there.